Good morning. So today we're going to deal with the quadratic formula and factoring. So I'm going to start with quadratic formula here, and then once I'm done, I'll select the question for the factoring. All right. So I tend to write down the formula first. It makes it easier for me in terms of just being able to plan out where everything goes. But before I write it out, I have to identify which pieces are going to be labeled as A, B, and C. So for that, I start with the fact that I know that this is going to be A, this is going to be B, and this is going to be C. Now I write my formula, and so my formula says that this is negative B plus or minus square root of B squared minus 4 times A times C all over 2 times A. Once I've done that, I go ahead and I start making the changes. So the only thing is that every time I make the change from letter to the number always ends up in parentheses. So replace the letter, the A, B, C, replace it with a parentheses. So look at what I'm going to do. I already have a negative, so I'll put negative, and in parentheses, B happens to be 10. Then I go ahead and say plus or minus, and again I have 10 in parentheses squared minus 4 times A happens to be 8, so that's 8 times, and C is negative 6. I'll go ahead and extend this all over 2 times 8. Once I've done that, I'm going to start fixing it, simplifying it a little bit. The negative and the 10 can now be simplified to simply say, so I'll put this as a negative 10 plus or minus, and now I'm going to deal with the stuff inside square root. So starting with 10 squared. 10 squared happens to be 100. So in there, I'll put 100. Next, I notice that I have a negative 4 and a negative 6. So in my mind, I think negative and negative makes positive since I'm multiplying everything. Now I'm going to multiply 4 times 8 times 6. Given that I don't know what that is, I'm going to use my calculator here on the side. And I'll say that I have 4 times 8, which equals 32, times 6, which is 192. So in here, I go ahead and I type in there 192. Having done that, on the bottom, I now have 16. Now, if I focus on the 100 plus 192, I quickly realize that that is the same thing as 292. Now, 292 is not a perfect square. So what I need to do with 292 is I need to break it down. Okay, so I'm going to take 292 and I'll start by basically saying what makes 292. Well, that would be 2 times something because this is an even number. So I'm going to clear my screen and say 292 divided by 2, and that makes 146. 146 is even, so I know that that can be multiplied by 2. So that means I divide here by 2. That makes 73. Now, there's nothing that goes into 73. 73 happens to be prime. So at the end of this, I'm going to make a list that says that this turns into 2 times 2 times 73. And by the way, the answer is still in the square root symbol. Now, our technique is that every time we have doubles inside the square root symbol, we circle the pair, and one of those comes out. The remaining number, which is 73, is stuck in there. And now I proceed. So now my new answer is going to turn into negative 10 plus or minus 2 square root of 73 all over 16. Now, in order for me to finish this, I'm going to notice that I have the 10, the 2, and the 16, not including the 73 though. But all of these numbers I just highlighted happen to be even. So there's a little rule that says that if all of these pieces on the numerator and denominator are all even, for example, I can go ahead and cut them all in half. Now, what that means is that I'm allowed to now rewrite this answer as being x equal to, so half of 10 is negative 5, plus or minus half of 2 is 1, so this turns into 73. I don't really have to put the 1 in there. And half of 16 is 8. And this, in fact, becomes my final answer. Negative 5 plus or minus square root of 73 over 8. I don't have to break them apart. It's understood that I already have both answers because of the positive and negative. So this is considered a completely acceptable answer. Okay. And that is basically how the quadratic formula works. Okay. Whenever possible, you want to go ahead and just literally replace the numbers accordingly. Then you concentrate on the quadratic, well, the square root section. If necessary, you break it down and then you put it back into your equation. Right? Hope that helps. Now I'm going to move into the factoring. Now for the factoring, I'm going to pick, let me double check this. Let me fix this real quick. I'm going to pick a different question for that. So let's see here. I'm going to select this question. So starting with the 2, I'm going to go up to 15 and I'm going to multiply that. Okay. If I go ahead and multiply that, I end up with the idea that 2 times negative 15 happens to be a negative 30. So in here, I'll put negative 30. Then I have negative 7 for the addition section. So that'll be negative 7. And I have my 2 blank spaces. With that, I need to think of two numbers that multiply to make 30, but add up to make 7. So I have several combinations. Okay. The easiest combination is to say 5 times 6. That's the first one that comes to mind. But 5 and 6, there's no way I'm going to make 7 out of that. Then I see that this ends with a 0. And so because this ends with a 0, then in my mind, I think to myself, well, I could easily do 3 times 10. And I know 10 and 3 can make a 7. So all I got to figure out is, since this is negative, right here, negative 30, then I got to figure out which of these I'm going to make negative. So I'm going to start with negative 3, see what happens. And I test negative 3 times 10, negative 30. And I'm going to do it here. 3 negative plus 10 is 7. Well, I want negative 7. So what that means to me is I'm going to switch it, make this one into a positive, make this one into a negative. And now if I check, that will be the same thing as 3 minus 10, which is of course negative 7. That's what I wanted. Next, I notice that my leading coefficient is a 2. Because of that, I'm going to put a 2 in here and in here. Now, the first one, it doesn't do anything. I can't divide there. But for the second one, I can reduce and divide. So I know this turns into negative 5 over 1. My final answer in factor form now turns into this. So let me set up my parentheses. So starting with the 2, that turns into 2x plus 3. And since I did the simplification here, I'm going to start with the 1 over here. And so that's going to turn into x minus 5. And there you have it. This is how I break this down um, into factor form. Okay. So from standard form to factor form. All right. Hope this made some sense. Okay. Until next time. Bye.